down with the neutralizing gas, but then eventually the Dondozo is supposed to come in, click rest, do some trip damage with Earthquake, hit the flying types with Ice Fang. That's what you need it for. Maybe hit an Amoonguss with Ice Fang, and then click rest again. So like that's the whole idea. So against an Amoonguss though, this strategy might be kind of tough. And just because of that Amoonguss, yeah, I wonder how this will play out.
Yeah, indeed, as we do have our leads going into Game 1. Sam showing off that shiny Kyogre paired up with the Whimsicott versus Victor's Roaring Moon and the Calyrex Shadow Rider. We've got the Photosynthesis now activated via the booster energy, further heightening the speed. So Roaring Moon is now going to be the fastest thing on the field.
And there's one more thing that we didn't get to talk about, but there was a Terra Blast on that Roaring Moon. No acrobatics.
Yes.
There is a Terra Poison Terra Blast potential, and of course Whimsicott would not like that. The other thing that is important to consider here is the fact that Victor might be able to switch in Wheezing, shut off Prankster from the Whimsicott, and then use potentially that very, very powerful Terra Blast to get the knockout. So I wonder if that's what they're going for, but no, it's the Dondozo switching in.
Ooh, wanting to be able to resist any water-type focus from the Kyogre. Tailwind has been set up right now via the Prankster. Moving first, Water Spout will be dealing torrential amounts of damage thanks to the rain as well as the Mystic Water, nearly getting a two-shot onto a resisted Roaring Moon, as the knockoff will be able to get rid of the Mystic Water, so not being able to hit as intensely as previously.
Yeah, big knockoff, because of course you lower the damage output from Kyogre significantly. No more Mystic Water, no more full-powered Water Spouts, and yeah, now the question is, can Sam really use the couple of Tailwind turns that he has left to deal the damage that he needs to before the Dondozo, yeah, is on the field, and before he can't deal with the Dondozo well enough anymore, because any damage that doesn't knock the Dondozo out might just be damage that will be recovered with rest.
And something to note as well, this isn't leftovers Dondozo, so there's not going to be any additional recovery built over time at the end of the turn. It's just got the Rocky Helmet. Facing off against two special offensive Pokemon, it will be getting its Omni Boost, bringing it all up to +2 across all stats. Moonblast will be targeting down because of the Command ability kicking in. Going to be absolutely tanking that. And Origin Pulse does connect. Oh!
It does connect. Dondozo makes it through the turn, and I think we're gonna see an Ice Fang now. Yep.
Yeah.
And oh, it's not quite enough to knock out the Whimsicott. So with that critical hit, yeah, another round of Moonblast and Origin Pulse should just be enough to get the knockout if Sam wants to do that. But of course, yeah, Victor is kind of locked now in this position, cannot switch out at all. So if there is something that Sam could do to reposition himself to have an even better setup for the next turn, then it might be worth it to do that now. And that's something that he's considering. So sure, could go for the Moonblast and like Water Spout, they would get the KO, but maybe it's even better to get something like the Urshifu in and use the last turn of Tailwind when his opponent cannot really protect against the Surging Strikes.
Yeah, I think that was an excellent call, Marcus, as that is exactly what Sam is going to be doing. Wants to be able to capitalize in the subsequent turn. Is it going to connect? It does! The animation does come out, but it's not enough to pick up the KO, just showing why the critical hit was so important, and Ice Fang actually missing.
Yeah, well, this Dondozo traditionally really trained to be very, very specially defensively bulky. And yeah, maybe not something that Sam was expecting, that Dondozo could take another Origin Pulse. However, even if the Dondozo landed, the Ice Fang, yeah, would not have done that much damage. So the really scary part would have been an Earthquake. But yeah, even then, I think it's fine. I think that was a risk that Sam was okay taking. But now, as long as U-turn KOs, like he still gets to reposition and hit the Tatsugiri once it pops out of the Dondozo. And yeah, Tatsugiri, as it pops out, cannot really do anything this turn, so Victor just has to see what Sam decides to do. He's at the mercy of Sam's switcher now.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to, most importantly, break the Focus Sash, so further decline its presence availability with the Ice Beam. Even if you get a cheeky freeze at this point, I don't think it's going to matter too much, because the most crucial thing, like you called out there, Marcus, is the Whimsicott is now back on the field. U-turn being such a great utility to be able to pick up the KO and get that Tailwind potentially online in the subsequent turn.
And I think this was a great display of how you can approach this Dondozo matchup. Sam could have taken the knockout on Dondozo a turn earlier, and then we would have had the same kind of Whimsicott and Kyogre situation. But in that scenario, the Tatsugiri still would have been at full HP with a Focus Sash intact. Now we have kind of the same situation, but Tatsugiri took some damage. And yeah, sure, Urshifu also took a little bit of like Rocky Helmet chip, but that's not the point. The point is that Whimsicott now could, if it wanted to, go for another Tailwind. Tatsugiri is already damaged, making it easier to knock it out in the next couple of turns. And Sam can retain the speed control.
Yeah, as we're actually going to have our first Terastallization, if I'm not mistaken, on the field. It's going to be the Roaring Moon opting in for the Terra Poison. In this case, most likely wanting to actually dispatch of the Whimsicott and sort of halter the Tailwind offense that support that Sam's been able to get the past couple turns.
Yeah, Tatsugiri should be able to take another one of those Ice Beams.
Ooh.
And now with the Terra, nicely done. The Roaring Moon can also go for the Tailwind, matching this speed control. And Icy Wind now bringing the speed control in Victor's favor, knocking out the Whimsicott and doing, well, almost no damage to the Kyogre, but more importantly, dropping its speed.
Yeah, and I think the Terra Poison right there, wanting to allow the Roaring Moon to be able to survive for yet another turn, is so crucial, especially because of that Icy Wind interaction from the Tatsugiri. But now Sam is going to most likely have to make a decision between, do you bring the Urshifu right now, or maybe, which is going to fall susceptible to Icy Wind offense, especially because of the Terra Poison. Right now, sure, it's not acrobatic, so it wouldn't be able to outright pick up the KO. Yeah. But the combination from the Tatsugiri will most likely be enough.
Yeah, Urshifu has the Choice Scarf, so I feel like you want to use that because, yeah, it will outspeed both the Tatsugiri as well as the Roaring Moon, as it had used its booster energy previously. So that is also what Sam is going for. But the problem is that Kyogre probably cannot KO this Tatsugiri. So even if you go for, let's say, Surging Strikes to knock out the Roaring Moon, Tatsugiri in return could go for either the Icy Wind or for a Draco Meteor. Probably Icy Wind, because, yeah, you have the Calyrex in the back. Either way, though, well, if Draco Meteor is enough to get the knockout on Urshifu, you might want to go for Draco Meteor, because the one Pokemon that Sam has that kind of keeps him in the game against the Calyrex Shadow of his opponent is that Urshifu, and he needs to make sure that he finds a way to position his Urshifu in a way that it can knock out the Calyrex Shadow Rider over on Victor's side. And
ideally, it would have to have the Rain available as well to be able to guarantee the additional damage output required to push it straight over the bat. But Protect will be the move of choice on the Kyogre. U-turn nearly actually picking up the KO on the Tatsugiri. Most crucially, that Amoonguss will now be brought onto the field and allow the Urshifu a bit more time to bide away, maybe stall out the Tailwinds, as Knockoff will be targeting that Amoonguss. Sure, it'll knock off the Rocky Helmet, but not before it gets some damage, I would say, back. But the Icy Wind, at this point, Amoonguss, we know it's the slowest thing on the field. This part doesn't really matter, the speed drop.
Yeah, nice play there, I think, by Victor, identifying that, yeah, Urshifu is the biggest threat. And going for Knockoff, typically Knockoff is not a move that, yeah, gives you any speed control. In this particular instance, though, knocking off the Choice Scarf on Urshifu would mean that Calyrex Shadow of Victor could outspeed it in later turns. So, yeah, proving good foresight here by Sam to use U-turn, get out the Urshifu. However, of course, had he gone for something like an Origin Pulse with a Kyogre, that would have been fantastic for him. But instead, yeah, it's still a 3v3, and I wonder if he can, get off some big moves with the Kyogre, because that's what he needs right now.
Here we go. Terra Blast is going to be hitting for neutral because of the Grass and Poison typing of the Amoonguss. Not enough to pick up the KO, but the Draco Meteor Focus will connect. It will get rid of Amoonguss, and all of a sudden, it's going to be inviting the Urshifu back in outside of Rain. Sam, down to his final two Pokemon, is going to be able, I'd say, to connect with the Origin Pulse, but the Water Spout is more than safe enough to guarantee the KO, even if the Tatsugiri is 4 times resisted because of the low HP.
Yeah, powerful enough. I mean, I don't know how familiar both of our players are with the Terra Blast, Terra Poison Elks on the Amoonguss, but yeah, it seemed like Amoonguss still powerful enough to take that attack. But now there's another very important damage calculation that you need to be aware of, and that is Urshifu outside of Rain with the Surging Strikes, Terra Water against this Calyrex, because this is what I think the game will come down to. Calyrex should be powerful enough to get the knockout on Urshifu. The question is, and this is, I like the play by Sam, going for the Protect on Kyogre, because this means that even as long as the Calyrex is in life or KO range, it would faint at the end of this turn.
Yeah, I think such a good call as well. Terra Water, the Terra in general actually finally being utilized by Sam. It's all about the opportune moment to be able to bring it in. Protect, as we did note from the Kyogre, but Surging Strikes with the Terra Water. Oh, this is going to be a close one, Marcus. First hit going. We've got the second boom, and guess what? We've got the third one. Calyrex is now down. It has been felled, and Sam Bentham has been able to pick up his first Game 1 win in this set.
Yeah, this is one of those calculations where it's like really important as the Urshifu player to understand how bulky is your opponent's Calyrex, because they can be trained in such a way that they can tank this attack. However, of course, with a Life Orb set on a team like this, usually you would expect it to go down to this Terra Water Searching Strikes, but you never know, right? Yeah, it might sacrifice a little bit of speed so that it can boost up its defense or the HP a little bit more. But yeah, no, Sam getting confirmation that this is actually enough, and this is the kind of the route that he played towards, and he gets what he wanted. He gets the KO and takes the first game.
Yeah, and I mean, there were two tailwinds that were set up, I'd say, from Sam's side, and then Victor later on in the game got a tailwind up at the same time as Sam's second. So there was a lot of speed control already available. I think Dondozo being able to take so much damage from the critical hit Origin Pulse after Sam's Kyogre was able to lock in, it did initially feel quite important, because we know that there's no leftovers on the Dondozo, and its sort of minimal availability of HP could have pushed a bit more of momentum back onto Sam because of the additional turns of longevity. Maybe.
Yeah, one thing I'm wondering about now that we talk about this is the Dondozo even worth it? I mean, what did it actually do? It went for the Ice Fang.
Yeah.
Tatsugiri did decently well. Like, it went for some icy wins. Maybe with Draco Meteor could have done a little bit more against the Kyogre had the Roaring Moon gotten the knockout on the Amoonguss. But I wonder, let's go back a bit again. Turn one. What if the play that I mentioned, you switch in Weezing and you Terra Poison, KO the Whimsicott? Like, that would have worked. But it seems like Victor has other plans, bringing out the Dondozo right away. And yeah, on the other hand, Sam doesn't really have any reason to switch things up in a major way. It worked well, and yeah, he's just going for it again.
I mean, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Because right now, it sort of depends, like we said, if there's going to be a Galarian Weezing in the back or not. But given the Dondozo's here, most likely not. The Weezings do tend to want to lead first to be able to set up any sort of spikes and whatnot and start taking down the timer of the opponent's side of the field. But Tatsugiri will be brought in immediately. Commander getting the Omni boost on the Dondozo. It wants to be able to focus down, most likely, on the Whimsicott and not take as much damage from the Kyogre.
Yeah, I think he wants to, as you say, just get rid of the Whimsicott right away, Ice Fang this turn, but then maybe go for Earthquake the following turn, because we've seen a tendency from Sam now that he wants to keep Whimsicott safe. And Urshifu, because of the... Oh, it's Origin Pulse, actually.
Ooh, no Water Spout.
Oh, and it misses the Dondozo.
Oh!
We've seen how little damage it did in the previous game. Okay, actually, Victor switching up the order, going for the Earthquake first, maybe to try and see how much damage is it going to do to the Whimsicott. He's already seen the damage of Ice Fang in the first game, leaving the Whimsicott there at 40 HP. Well, that it might have been a damage roll, but just barely could be enough to get the knockout. But now Sam, yeah, well, he's got his opponent in the spot that he likes, where Dondozo is on the field. There's not going to be any more switches you got to worry about. Like, you can play against the Dondozo now, but how do you do that? You could Encore Lock into Earthquake and Terra into Grass with the Kyogre. I think that's what Sam decided to do. But he doesn't really have great Pokemon to really capitalize on the fact that the Dondozo is locked into Earthquake. Everything will take at least a little bit of chip damage, and as long as the Dondozo just keeps going for Earthquake, it might be able to soften up everything just enough that Calyrex then later on can come come in and clean the game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a bit of a slobber knocker of an initial early game between both of our trainers. It's just more so being able to get that board state that inherently will benefit your strategy. In this case, Sam just wants to go for as much damage as possible on this Dondozo over time. The fact that it doesn't have leftovers, as we've mentioned, does mean that it is still going to be felled by built-up damage, but it's so bulky and it's able to resist at least the Kyogre's offensive prowess.
Yeah, and you do have Amoonguss that you can switch in, but there's no Pollen Puff on this Amoonguss. Something that I like to do against Dondozo if I'm playing like this kind of like balancey team.
Yeah, side pollen stuff.
Yeah, you cycle the Incin and the Amoonguss, and then you go for like Fake Out and Self Pollen Puff, then you go for like Rage Powder and Parting Shot, and so on and so on. This is not available for Sam right here, so going for Water Spout, doing a little bit more chip damage and taking yet another Earthquake, but also we have to see when does the Encore end, because that's going to be really important for Sam's planning here.
Yeah, and it's a really good way to be able to guarantee that you can put it to sleep as well. It's Terra Electric, it's not Terra Grass on this Dondozo, so you want to be able to allow the Kyogre more preservation, bring in the Whimsicott as we see Sam doing so, and maybe even have the Encore available for the subsequent turn immediately after.
Yeah, that's once again nicely positioned here by Sam, bringing in the Whimsicott in the right turn. Now the Dondozo is Sport, won't be able to go for a move in the next turn, so Sam can go for something like a Grass Knot and a Moonblast just to do a little bit more damage. Encore just ended, Tailwind just ended, but Whimsicott just hit the field at the very right time and is even going for the Encore right away just to make sure that this Dondozo cannot switch to its moves.
Which checks out, makes a lot of sense. It's sort of a battle of attrition at this point. You just want to be able to whittle down the Dondozo's HP as best as possible.
Yeah, one thing that is interesting to notice, this Grass Knot will actually get some recoil damage from Rocky Helmet, because even though it's a special move, it is one of those rare special moves that does make contact. So Amoonguss taking a little bit of chip damage, and at some point Sam might want to consider switching it out just to get some little bit HP recovery from Regenerator.
Yeah, and sort of trying to cycle this strategy in a very similar way to what you said. If you have an Amoonguss, you could do Pollen Puff and Incineroar switch-ins and whatnot. It's a good way to be able to whittle down the HP as best as possible, as we do see it yet again. Moonblast and Grass Knot will be coming out. We're just waiting for the Amoonguss. It's maybe within range. I don't think it is. Yeah, just barely misses it. But most crucially, you're able to do such a good job on locking this Dondozo in.
So another question is, do you want to keep the Amoonguss around? Then you should probably switch into Urshifu, but what is it really offering you for the rest of the game? Like, surely you will recover a little bit of HP with Regenerator, but at this point I feel like it might even be worth to just let the Amoonguss go down. However, it wouldn't be in range of another Rocky Helmet recoil chip. And yeah, this Amoonguss Whimsicott works really nicely against the current position, against the Dondozo, but once Dondozo is gone, there's gonna be a Calyrex switching in, and then, yeah, like Amoonguss Whimsicott doesn't do much against that, so Sam once again wants to prepare for that scenario, sets up the Tailwind and switches in Urshifu. I think is a strong positioning from him.
Yeah, truly, especially because the Dondozo did not wake up and get any sort of additional damage dealt, but most crucially, the Urshifu can now pick off the Dondozo, allow the Moonblast from the Whimsicott to target down the Tatsugiri, definitely break his Focus Sash, but no, it doesn't actually pick up the KO from the U-turn. You see Sam is completely dismayed there. Question is, has he done at least the safe locking into the Dondozo slot, or has he targeted the Tatsugiri out of, I don't know, habit?
Yeah, usually you should always be targeting down the Dondozo unless you very deliberately want to waste your Pokemon's move, which I don't think Sam wants to do in this situation. But yeah, of course, had that Dondozo gone down to U-turn just now, Moonblast would have been redirected into the Tatsugiri, setting up for the same situation that we had in the previous game, where Sam gets to kind of like a free hit into the Tatsugiri, but that's not what happened, and now all of Sam's Pokemon are, yeah, quite significantly damaged. The only one that is still like relatively healthy is that Urshifu. And it's tough now because Tatsugiri still has the Focus Sash intact. Right. It would require 2 moves come out from Sam. And yeah, we've seen before how Kyogre cannot touch Tatsugiri that much. Has to make a decision now. Do you want to go for an Origin Pulse? Do you want to go for Ice Beam? Like, neither seem really beneficial at this point, though.
Yeah, I think it truly just comes down to battle of attrition, really. You want to be able to just lower the HP as much as possible from Victor's side. But like you said, he's got very healthy Pokemon on his side, so it's just all about trying to capitalize off of that momentum. And talking about momentum, we see the Terra Poison from the Roaring Moon and wants to make sure it doesn't fall short of any focus of the Moonblast or Ice Beam, as Tatsugiri is now targeted.
Yeah, special attack drop, depending on how much this Urshifu doesn't get the KO. Once again, a Pokemon on Victor's side just barely not getting knocked out. And that allows Victor now to fire off an Icy Wind, just like in Game 1. This time, though, will not knock out the Whimsicott. Kyogre is still in it as well. However, I feel like now Roaring Moon, after it set up the Tailwind, could outspeed, go for the Terra Blast into the Whimsicott slot. Tatsugiri, on the other hand, could target down the Kyogre, and we're potentially looking at a turn where Victor takes 2 KOs. So Sam has to be very, very careful how to maneuver those next couple of turns, because eventually his Tailwind will run out, and then how do you deal with the Calyrex that is still waiting in the back for Victor?
Yeah, exactly that. And the fact that we have already got a staggered Tailwind scenario going on. The Whimsicott most definitely will be going for the Tailwind right now. Maybe Sam's identified a bit of a win condition there to maybe preserve the Kyogre, allow the Whimsicott to go down, bring the Urshifu back in, and be able to dispatch with the full brace of momentum with that final Tailwind turn. But you're going to have to find out, Amoonguss does switch in, and Kyogre has switched out.
Encore coming out, though. Nice way to abuse the fact that after Terrestrialization, this Roaring Moon is no longer a Dark type, no longer immune to Prankster moves, and now you can lock it into Tailwind. However, Icy Wind comes out, will knock out Whimsicott, doing a little bit of chip damage to Amoonguss, lowering its speed, which, yeah, doesn't really matter. But now with Whimsicott out of the picture, it means that there's no way for Sam to reset Tailwind, and Victor will have speed advantage going into this next turn.
Yeah, and it's just about maybe trying to have as much damage sponge potential from the Amoonguss as you can, but it's kind of tough when we got Icy Wind still available for Victor on his side of the field, and it's just going to be to the point where can you get rid of the individual 3 slots that remain from Victor's side with the Surging Strikes, maybe even play up the Kyogre.
So this turn is really crucial. Sam has to wonder, do you want to Rage Powder? Do you want to attack? And Victor could stay in with the Roaring Moon, even though it's locked into Tailwind, because you don't want to expose Calyrex in a position where Urshifu can just get the knockout. So Victor has the option. Either you switch in the Calyrex and you hope that your opponent doesn't target that slot, because eventually you want to have Calyrex on the field against opponents that are slower than it, and then Calyrex will win. But this is not easy. Icy Wind could come out to bypass this Rage Powder, lower the speed of Urshifu, and then it might be Victor's game. And he stays in, but where did Urshifu target?
Yeah, we're going to have to find out. Icy Wind will be moving first and double connecting as well. Putting the Amoonguss within range for another pickup, I would say. A KO with the subsequent Icy Wind. Speeds do drop, of course. Urshifu, where are you targeting? You're going for the Roaring Moon. You will be picking up the KO. And Victor must be really happy to be able to bring in that Calyrex, still having Tailwind available and another offensive piece by its side.
Yeah, I think that was the perfect turn or the perfect play that Victor had to make here to stay in the game. Had he gone for Draco Meteor, that would have been redirected by Rage Powder, and all of a sudden Urshifu, yeah, not affected by the speed drop. I guess you would still have the speed advantage with the Tailwind still up, but now it means that Urshifu needs to swap out and in again later. Sam could still try to go for like a similar type of line, but having invested Terrestrialization earlier in the battle on Kyogre means that he can no longer go for this Terra Water plan, and without the Terrestrialization, I really don't think that there is any chance Surging Strikes gets the KO on Calyrex, unless, of course, Rain is still up, which right now it still is.
We're going to have to find out. Rage Powder will be trying to reposition any sort of single target moves, but that's not what we're going to be seeing. Astral Barrage will pick up the KO on Amoonguss, and the Urshifu just within range, of course, of the life orb boosted potential of this grim horse and its rider. Victor will be bringing, most likely, this back to a Game 3. There still is the Kyogre over on Sam's side, but sort of what we were discussing, there is so much speed control dominance from Victor's side, both naturally as well as with utility.
Yeah, double knockout by the Calyrex means, of course, also double boost by Grimnay, and this lonely Kyogre, it is able to set up Rain once more, but yeah, it's not going to be enough, I'm afraid. And we'll go into Game 3. Sam knows it, Victor knows it. Sam locks in the forfeit. And once again, a really positional play that once again shows us when playing against a strong Dondozo player like Victor, it's not only about taking out the Dondozo.
Yep.
Dondozo wasn't the problem in either of those two games, but the little chip damage that Dondozo was able to accumulate over a couple of turns, even when it was anchored into Earthquake, even when it was just hitting into targets that resisted that move, it was enough to put Pokemon into the range of Astral Barrage, and that was the game plan for Victor. He executed it perfectly, and that means we will have a Game 3 at our hands.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think you pointed that out quite nicely there, Marcus. The fact that Dondozo, a Pokemon commonly known as being set up via the Commander ability, given it Omni Boost and whatnot, is essentially setting up the Calyrex Shadow Rider, the Roaring Moon pieces for mid to end game potential of just sweeping up those KOs, and doing it in such a fashion of essentially being a damage sponge. It's so bulky, and all of those turns that it's allowed to survive and be on the field, all of that damage just stacks up, like you mentioned, and that's going to be a big trouble that Sam's going to have to really try to tackle, because I don't see Victor changing this up drastically. It's sort of worked out unless he's expecting a full focus lead, counter lead, I would say, from Sam's side, but I'm not sure what that.
Yeah, you know what? I still like my plan here.
Oh yeah. Oh, the Weezing.
I want to go Calyrex and Roaring Moon with Weezing and Indeedee in the back. You know, Weezing has. Or sorry, Indeedee has safety goggles as well, which would help against the Moongus. And while Dondozo did well, I feel like Sam has shown in both games, even though he lost the second one, but Sam has shown that he knows how to maneuver around a Dondozo. He showed that he understands how you can really play around the fact that Dondozo is locked in its place. And with Encore, he has really shown, yeah, the right tools to stop that. So I would be very scared to bring Dondozo once more into this.
I mean, we're going to have to find out, and we are going to be finding out very shortly. From Sam's side then, is there any reason why you would bring another Pokemon out of the four that we've only been seeing from him?
I think, well, you need Kyogre, you need Whimsicott, you kind of need a Moongus, you definitely need a Moongus, you need Urshifu. I don't think you want to switch things up if you're Sam.
Yeah, I think you're just going to have to be able to get that better board state going. And oh my lord, Marcus, we see a Weezing being brought straight away onto the field. Adaptation from Victor's side alongside the Roaring Moon versus the Whimsy and the Kyogre on Sam's side.
So now he's doing it a little bit differently.
No hard switch.
Yeah, no hard switch. Bringing Weezing and Roaring Moon right away means that now Sam sees this coming. He knows, okay, there is a potential for a Terra Blast into Whimsicott, and he can consider this Terra Dark.
Yeah.
So now this means later on in the game, Terra will not be available for Urshifu, and we saw how that somewhat restricted his damage potential later in the game. So investing something like a Terra Dark on the Whimsicott, I think it's needed in this situation, but it doesn't feel good.
It doesn't feel good, but it's definitely going to be executed. We've got the knockoff focusing down on the Kyogre. No protects. Tailwind has been set up as well, and all of a sudden, we have got a similar situation, I would say, from Game 1, but no Origin Pulse. The Water Spout anticipating no focus of the knockoff into the slot, and we have a Poison Gas. Connect only on the Kyogre. The Whimsicott is able to avoid it and further allow itself additional sustainability going into this.
Yeah, big play there by Victor. Not only did he not Terra the Roaring Moon, which it could have gone down to Moonblast right away, but also, well, if you don't Terra, then you can't use Terra Blast without the Terra. I mean, you can, but it's not going to do any damage. You know what I mean? So going for the knockoff, a ton of damage on Kyogre, getting rid of the item, reducing the power of Water Spout so much, and now Sam has invested so many resources. No Rain up because of that wheezing as well. So, yeah, so little damage was done here by Sam. It already feels like a really terrible spot to be in, but
yeah.
Well, you got the tailwind off. Your Whimsicott is somewhat safe. It avoided the poison gas, but now there could be a strange steam coming your way. It's rough. It's rough out there for Sam.
It is indeed, but we're going to have to see how Sam can try to identify a way out of this situation.
Wait.
Wow.
Wait, it's Dondozo. Oh, that's...
Hard switch.
No Calyrex.
Yeah, no Cali. Wow. Okay, well, now we've got Tatsugiri coming in.
Wow.
I don't think the Spore's going to go into that slot of the Dondozo. May actually be trying to catch out the wheezing, and the Tatsugiri switching in alongside the Dondozo would be such an excellent play to be able to avoid a focus on that slot. But we're going to have to see how it plays out. Risky plays demanded for a win condition. Let's see. Moonblast, of course, will be now targeting the Dondozo.
Yeah, Sam switching in the Amoonguss here, kind of preemptively, a really amazing call-out, I gotta say, because I would not have expected Dondozo to be in the back here, but this works out perfectly for Sam. He gets both of the, well, former grass types, Whimsicott, now a dark type, but he gets both of them into position, can freely Spore now. He can think about encoring, he can think about going for like Grass Knot and Moonblast, and yeah, I feel like that was a big opportunity for Victor after how well that first turn went, but doubling out into the Dondozo now means that he's really stuck in place. He's also asleep. There's nothing he can really do. Now he's encored. There's no choice that he can make. He cannot really outplay his opponent at this point for the next couple of turns at least. And Sam once again has shown so well that he knows how to deal with the Dondozo. Encored now into Earthquake. Grass Knot, well, it doesn't do that much damage, but over time damage will stack up. And the Rocky Helmet chip, well, he's still healthy enough that, yeah, he can recover that with Regenerator.
Yeah, exactly, and the fact that the Dondozo's asleep right now will allow the Whimsicott to just go for free damage, not necessarily get the Tailwind set up just yet. You want to be able to just time it quite nicely in order to outspeed, let's say, the Roaring Moon and such. But Moonblast will be focusing down on the Dondozo. Grass Knot at that range. Ooh, I would say it's probably not going to pick up the KO, but the Dondozo wakes up. It goes for the Earthquake, and it will, let's see, it doesn't pick up the KO, just barely on the Whimsicott. Grass Knot, oh, wow, it does actually get a critical hit to pick off that slot. Gets a bit of recoil damage via the Rocky Helmet, but most crucially, the Catfish is gone.
I wonder if you're Sam, if you would have preferred there not to be a critical hit. I think the ideal scenario would have been it just barely not KO'd, so that next turn you can go for Moonblast to get the knockout and Spore into the Tatsugiri right away. This, however, allows you to potentially go for a Tailwind, which also is quite nice. However, if it's the Roaring Moon, well, we know that there is no Calyrex. So where is the damage coming from? Where's the damage coming from against, for example, Urshifu on Sam's side? That's the one thing that I'm a little bit worried about for Victor. Rocky Helmet on Dondozo would have been one way, but due to the awesome switch in to Amoonguss, kind of calling or covering for this Dondozo a couple turns ago, it means that, yeah, there's no more Rocky Helmet on Victor's side, so yeah, this Urshifu is looking great.
Yeah, and I think primed and ready, the fact that Sam did have that foresight is so detrimental, because you place yourself to the point that, sure, Kyogre has taken so much damage, but at this point, you're just starting to round things up with the actual Whimsicott pressure of the Amoonguss too. And I would even say if there was a Calyrex in the back or something like that, maybe we had an additional slot, you can do the outlandish play that you mentioned, bring the Wheezing to guarantee that you can outspeed the Whimsicott. But no, Tailwind has been set up on both sides of the field. The Tatsugiri will be the faster of the Amoonguss, goes for the Icy Wind, and at that range it double KOs because it does connect on both.
Yeah, that's a big turn. If that didn't KO and Amoonguss got off a cheeky Spore from a position where, yeah, we probably would have expected a switch potentially. That could have been game-changing. Now, though, Sam gets to bring out both Water-type Pokemon, set up the rain, and have this Choice Scarf Urshifu potentially shred through Victor's team. But because Tatsugiri is still at full HP, still has the Focus Sash. Yeah. how with 2 water-type Pokemon, how do you deal with the Tatsugiri now? It's not so easy. Do you need to lock into close combat potentially? But that's really not what you want to do because, yeah, then against the Weezing that is still waiting in the back for Victor, you need a water-type attack. So it's a very tough spot to be in, and I feel like maybe Victor actually maneuvered himself into a good position. But I still think anyone can take this.
100%. And I think personally, I feel like you'd have to just commit with the Terra Water potential, not Terra Water, sorry, but the Surging Strike's potential. It's going to still be up for grabs. We're going to have to see how it goes. Close combat, it's a very precarious situation because you are going to be walled by the Galarian Weezing, as you did call out. Protect from the Kyogre will be used first. Knock off. Oh, goes into the Urshifu, making sure it can't outspeed afterwards. And close combat will target the Roaring Moon, pick up the KO. Tatsugiri still has its Focus Sash intact. And the fact that Special Defense drop is now online from the Urshifu's side.
Oh, it's a Draco Meteor.
Oh, it focuses down on it, guarantees the KO the moment that it does connect. And Victor has done such an incredible job in being able to just bring this board state so heavily in his favor without his Calyrex Shadow Rider.
Yeah, I should not have doubted Victor's pick 1 second.
Wow.
Not bringing the restricted Pokemon, just focusing all on the Dondozo to get off a little bit of damage again in the mid game. But then I feel like it's the Tatsugiri again that is the star of the show. Firing off a powerful Draco Meteor, knocking out Urshifu, and that's going to be it.
That's it. Victor Jimenez, our winner of Swiss round number 7. Way to go about it, I would say, my friend. That was such an incredible display of high-level competitive VG.
Yeah, we see both players still discussing a little bit what could have happened, what could have